We'll now call the November 30th Budget Workshop session to order. And I guess we'll start with just talking a little bit about the budget season so far. When we started into this, I think there was 5 or 6 councillors who said that they didn't want to see any increase in the mill rate this year. The city manager brought us back a budget that showed no increase in the mill rate. And a number of the councillors didn't like where all the cuts were, and we've got into many discussions since then about what about this and what about that. And again, it comes down to the same scenario. If you want all the services, you're going to have to pay for them one way or another. And I think that rather than looking at further cuts, I guess I find it very difficult this year to go with a mill rate increase when the city has just this year received $3.4 million. I just think it's a lot to expect taxpayers to pay an increase when the city is taking in that kind of revenue this year. And one of the suggestions I have is that we've used, of what wasn't put away, we put $3 million away in CDs to help pay for our pension fund, which we all agreed to do. The balance, which was $440,000 approximately, I think, that was left, $220,000 of that was put into the budget, or not into the budget, but into the account for our unfunded liabilities, which is all the sick pay and vacation time for employees that was never ever funded since day one, which in itself was a big mistake, but it never was. And right now we're sitting at a point where we've got $128,000 short in the budget from where we'd like to be. And Austin, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these numbers. And we still have $220,000 roughly in our general fund out of that 440. And I'm suggesting that whether we take it out of there or whether there's something else we can do from the TIF account, which is another area that is getting very hard for us to manage, I think. And one of the questions I have in the fire department for the new boiler and that's coming out, that's not coming out of the TIF fund, is it?
No.
It's coming out of
The fire equipment reserve line.
Yeah. And that could come out of the TIF fund.
Could.
Well, it would be my suggestion that at least that part of it, which is, Chief Susie, what's the amount on the boiler? Do you know offhand? $53,000. That we take that out of the TIF fund and reduce that area by $53,000 for this year. If the number we have in there at, I think it's 75,000 is right, and we were going to take that 53 out of there, that we take it out of the TIF fund and reduce that by 53,000. And then we end up with a balance of 75,000 roughly, that we're still over budget. And we take that $75,000 out of the unspecified reserve fund that we have and apply it to some of the other areas on the capital expenses. For instance, the $100,000 for the ambulance. And that would clear that off, and we would then have a budget that has no mill rate increase, and that's where I think we ought to be. I don't know what other opinion other people have, but that's what I would like to see happen. I can't justify increase in taxes here when we got $3.4 million. I just, that doesn't make sense. That's all right. Nobody out there wanted to hear that anyway. I really don't care. I'm interested in the people here hearing it. One of those is not on, Austin, is it?
But it shows that it is.
Your buttons, though?
Yep.
Okay.
But it shows here that it's going out.
Anyway, What does the rest of council feel? What? You know, we're still gonna fund everything that we need. We'll move some money from the TIF fund, which is around $60,000. We'll move the rest from our unplanned reserve and still have money left in the reserve in case we want it for next year for something. And we'll have no tax increase. I know we're gonna have a tax increase from the county. We all realize that already. It's already been published. And I'm guessing that there might be an increase through the school, just based on past history. But you never know. We have a new superintendent of schools, maybe there won't be.
Okay, could you refresh my memory on what the 128,000 is buying?
That just covers everything. That's just the overage in the budget right
No,
now.
I know that, but I mean, we started at 0, and now we're at 128. I'm just wondering,
We started at
what we put back
67,000.
in?
Oh,
Weren't we 60,000 on the original?
well,
No,
off
we
the
were
top
never.
of my head, one
67
police
on.
officer was put
Okay.
back in.
There's still one less, right? You'll still have one less, okay.
Yeah, one police officer
Oh,
was put
and,
back in,
and the assistant city manager, okay.
and the assistant city manager was put back in.
And the original budget showed we'd have to cut $65,000 out
Oh, God,
to-
65.
to meet the no tax increase. That 65,000 had.
That we had
Yeah,
in.
you were gonna take another person out,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's been some other slight changes. There has been a change in the fire department and the capital budget, fire and ambulance department, or fire department. That was increased, but
What does that leave in our, so you would have to take, you're saying to move 75,000 of the out of the 440,000?
no, there's 220,000 that
20 left.
we haven't allocated anywhere. We put 220 into the unfunded liability account, which should cover it for this year and maybe next year. Or at least a good part of next year. It all depends when some of these people decide to retire. Or when they, I shouldn't say retire, when they decide to start drawing their pension. They could start drawing and not retire, but
I don't think that's correct. Don't they have to leave employment here in order to collect?
Correct.
oh yes, to collect that unfunded liability, right?
I could live with that. And before we spend the other 125,000, I'd like to put that into the uncompensated absences also, so that we don't go nickel and diming that amount. And we'll be paying off bills with one-time money.
Is there anything left?
Hmm?
Is there still 125,000?
Roughly, I mean, yeah, it'd be roughly 125. If we take the money from the TIF, put it into the fire department, and deduct that amount then from what we're gonna do in the budget to the fire department. And if we just take 100,000 roughly into the ambulance capital, there still is roughly 125 left in that. Austin, correct? Yeah, there'd be more than that.
Yeah, 140.
140 left in it.
I'm still concerned with being one police officer. How is that working for you with? I'm still concerned with being one short. Right, but there's money in the budget for one. So,
It reverts back to,
It reverts back to where we were before we got the grant for the extra officer that we added.
okay,
That's, yeah.
the extra officer that we got with the grant. Yeah.
and I will reapply for that grant.
Okay,
So that's still available.
Anyone else?
I think we need to add the other full-time librarian in. I just think we have done a huge work there, and to just then see it all crumble to pieces is a huge blow to what all the work that's been done, and what's trying to be done in the community going forward, so I'd like to see that added in. And for the cost amongst the residents of Caribou, it's not gonna break the bank.
I guess I can live with as long as there's no mill increase. I wasn't in favor of funding the original positions in the beginning, which the consensus was to add the city manager, assistant city manager, and police officer back in the budget. If this is a way that we can do it without getting a tax increase, and the majority of the people are happy with the services, I can live with that.
It doesn't include the librarian, though.
No, just make up the difference of the 128 with the budget as presented.
Counselor McDougal?
I think we're just kicking the can down the road by doing that. I think by not having an increase and by using that money in that form, as tempting as it is, I think that next year we're gonna have just that much harder of a decision. I mean, I think with revenue sharing where it is and costs continuing to go up,
I'd like to talk a little bit about revenue sharing, too. I know we're not doing the revenue budget yet, but, and Austin, maybe you can help me out here. When I look at our revenue sharing, this year our budget is $538,000, but we're estimating maybe we're gonna get $558. And next year you're budgeting for $527,000. When I look at Presque Isle, their budget this year is $713,000. And their budget for next year is $820,000. They're projecting that there's going to be an increase based on the increased sales tax and everything else in the state. I mean, somebody's got to be way off here.
I don't know what the Presque Isle formula distribution says from the state. I haven't looked at that. But we get our numbers from the state, and I'm assuming Presque Isle will get their numbers from the state as well.
Well, we don't have our numbers for 2016 yet.
Through the first half of the year, we do.
And what is it? Sure.
Half of the 527, or actually, we're budgeting $10,000 more than what their estimates are.
Like I say, I mean, it's based on sales tax and that the state collects, correct?
Yep.
That's where the money comes from for the revenue sharing. And they have in their budget that based on the current sales tax that's being collected, that their revenue for next year will be $820,000. I mean, it's up like $100,000.
Like I said, I don't know where they get their numbers from, if they use the same data that we do, or if they try and predict it other ways.
Well,
But I can pull that information from the state website.
yeah, somebody's definitely way off. I'm hoping it's us.
For the state fiscal year 16, Presque Isle shows 706,000.
In their budget or on the state site?
On the state site. And state site shows us at 517,000 for state fiscal year 16. So we're about halfway into the state fiscal year.
So they're certainly projecting their revenues a lot higher than they probably will be. Yeah. Anyway. Any other comments? Councilor McDonough? Councilor Martin, you want to go again?
Yeah, I think if the library needs more time, they should look at their schedule, and if they need to shut the library for half a day while they're working and not being bothered by well, I don't want to say bothered, but interrupted, I mean, that's something I would consider an option. I mean, there's got to be ways that, I mean, if it's open, what's it open now, 6 days a week? 5.5? So if it's 4.5, it's still, people will adjust to when they can go there.
Councilor McDonough, any comment?
Kick the can down the road some more. That's it.
Well, I mean, if we're not gonna kick the can down the road, then let's take the money back too from the unfunded liability. Why are we doing that? It's the same thing. You're using the money to,
That's something good that this council has actually done to prevent future councils from having to make that decision. I mean, I think that's a decision that we made that is a plus.
well,
It's actually moving in the right direction.
it's a plus in that, well, it's not a plus because it's still gaining momentum. The unfunded liability is still going on and still increasing, so, I don't think you're gaining anything, but
The gain would have been to do away with it. That would have been the gain, because then therefore you're not looking at the future cost and how to pay for it in the future. Fortunately, you know, we happen to have some money sitting in Augusta that, unbeknownst to us until a couple, 3 years ago, was sitting down there generating all kinds of interest. And if we didn't have that, what would we be doing today?
Making cuts.
I mean, are we gonna sit here and do this year and hope maybe next year somebody else is gonna say we got money hiding somewhere and say, here it is? That would be nice, I mean, but, you know, realistically,
So what do you propose? You don't want to kick the can down the road,
no,
but
I
you
don't wanna
want,
kick
but,
the can down the road. I don't,
but you don't want to increase the budget.
I have brought some things to this table, and I have compromised, probably beyond, and you know what I'm talking about. And I just get frustrated that every time we don't necessarily fix the problem, we push it ahead, or push it ahead. That's all. So, and that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to that.
Well, that's true, but what's
Okay.
your plan? What do you want us to do? What would you like to see done?
Well, I mean, we can always go back to what we were doing, take it out of capital improvements. I think the thing is that we gotta make these hard choices we don't wanna make.
I mean, this
And
way,
it's a little late in the budget process to do that now, so,
we're not taking anything out of capital improvements under this scenario.
no, I'm saying in
We're
the
just-
past, that's what
we're
we've
just looking
done.
at how we're
And so
funding
you
it.
can see what happened there, where roofs, windows, so on and so forth, right on down the line. I mean, I'm sitting here sweating tonight, whereas 2 years ago, I was freezing my buns off. I'm just saying. So, you know, that project should have been done a long time ago, but they wouldn't put the money away to do it, so.
Well, I don't like to see one-time money spent as part of ongoing budget. But we did do $500,000 from the tri-community landfill one year. And we survived that somehow. I mean, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do.
So if we take 100,000 from the ambulance reserve, take that out of the fund balance along with $53,000 paying for the boiler out of the TIF rather than capital improvement. Next year, we're already projecting to be $77,000 down when we start, so that would be $230,000 that we'd have to make up starting the 2017 budget year. That's before we know any fixed cost increases of health insurance or anything else, which could easily, you know, be another $100,000. So we could easily be looking at a $320,000 gap next year when we're getting to this time, if not more.
And that's a mill. That's about a mill.
Yep.
And we're looking at a third this year, about a third of a mill this year.
With none of the other positions added back, yep.
Well, it depends what else the TIF fund can be used. Can it be used for future capital improvements in the fire department,
Yep. And with the building, not equipment.
not equipment?
What did it cost for those doors and stuff? Was it $20,000 you spent there?
I think it was like 17.
Well, we could sit here and do this for next Monday night, but let's go down the line and see.
I mean,
I would
I
support.
realize we can't approve the budget till the next council meeting, but I would like to think that at the end of tonight here, that we at least have an agreement on what we're gonna do, and then next council meeting, we can approve it, rather than going through, that's why we're having a workshop to decide what we're gonna do. And
Okay, well, you propose something, I could live with your proposal, let's see how the rest of the council feels, and if that doesn't go, then we'll start something else.
All right, which end are we starting? Joan?
I can live with the proposal. I can, this year.
Tiffany?
No,
I can, I'm not 100% pleased with it, but I will go along with the proposal.
Shane?
No, I just don't think we use those one-time funds.
David?
I can support it.
Nope.
Well, obviously I can support it, because I proposed it, so on that basis, I guess it's 4-3, so. Any other discussion that anybody wants to have about it? I mean, like I say, if we, I know you're talking about kicking the can down the road, but, we're talking about that even with the money we're putting into that unfunded liability account. It's the same thing, that's money that could be used somewhere else, so, that can's been kicked down the road for a long time, for 20-some years probably.
No, not 20 years, because it had 600 and something thousand dollars at the inception of that, so it went a few years before it got eaten all up. It's just that previous councils failed to realize that, and then they didn't make the proper adjustments in their annual funding to keep pace.
I mean, we've already
So-
I don't know how much we've put into that already, Austin, from other sources when we did them, but we already stuck in, what, 150,000 or 200,000 or whatever?
The 220, I mean,
How were we at the peak in that thing? How high was it? The unfunded liability. Was it close to $1 million?
I don't know, going back.
The last big number I heard was like $725,000.
Well, I remember hearing 800,000.
Yeah,
That was
that's what
like,
I heard.
that was like
Huh?
3 years ago.
800.
Yeah,
4
I
years
remember
ago.
800,000 at some time here, so. And right now, it's at what, 6,
5 something,
5 something?
5 and a quarter.
What line were you taking 100,000 from?
We're not,
They're not taking it, they're
we're not
transferring.
taking it. We're just taking the money from money that the city has that is not scheduled to be put anywhere right now.
No, out of the reserve for the fire station, you said there was 100,000 that you wanted to move around there in the ambulance side.
No, rather than putting the money from the regular budget into that 100,000, we're putting the 100,000 in from the money that we have in the city account that's just in the general fund right
Fund
now.
balance. You're taking money from fund balance and putting it into
Yeah.
the ambulance reserve.
Undesignated funds.
Right.
Yeah. I should be familiar with that terminology.
The money will still be there. It's just where it's coming from.
So the proposal you have on the floor is for the 128, nothing more,
For the what?
128,000, right?
Well, it's 100,000 into that fund, and it's the how much was the boiler? 53,000 coming from the TIF funds to that. So there's only 100,000 coming out of that
28
fund.
left.
Because I thought we started the night at 128,000
Right.
over.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
what we're talking about?
Yeah,
So, we would not allocate any funds for an ambulance reserve in 2016. We would reduce the fire equipment reserve allocation from 75,000 down to 22,000 in 2016.
yeah, we would, well, we were not taking it down, we were just funding it differently.
Well, you can't fund TIF for a fire reserve. We can pay for the
Yeah.
boiler.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
You can pay that bill when it comes in from the
Yeah.
TIF. So are we reducing the fire equipment reserve line or
Would-
no?
For that amount.
So in 2016, we're going to fund fire equipment reserve at $22,000 rather than 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you take we have 128,000 you said you wanted to make up. 53,000 of it, what about the doors? Could that be put into it?
Yeah.
Okay, so 70,000 of it can come from TIF. That leaves 58,000. Take the undesignated balance, slide the 58,000 into the reserve, and his reserve is still there. I thought that's what I understood you meant.
And whose reserve is still there?
Fire department.
But if, you mean you still want to leave the reserve at 75,000?
It has to if you're gonna maintain the schedule that's in there for equipment.
Otherwise,
And
we're
we're-
gonna need more next year, and then you're just
Well, some of that-
backpedaling.
Well, let's not start that thing again. I mean, you got 75,000 in there this year, but you're already saying you're going to pay for the boiler out of that, right?
No, that's out of the current year, or that's out of the, what's already in the reserve. We're appropriating $75,000 to help us get.
But
to
if
that.
if you move the money from the TIF fund into there, or if you move the money, you take the money from the TIF fund to pay for that, in theory, you don't have to have it funded into that capital equipment account.
Right,
Right.
that's what we're saying. Next year.
You don't have to leave the capital equipment account at a 75,000, because if you do that, then you're still going to have a tax increase.
And that's, I think, where Mr. Martin was confused.
And I'm really confused now.
So you didn't have nothing to do with the doors in your,
No, his didn't, but he,
on his proposal.
The budget that we have today includes all the capital improvements, right? And in that capital improvement is $75,000 for the fire department. So, in that $75,000 for the fire department, we planned on paying $58,000 for the boiler, which means we're really only putting away $17,000 into the capital part for future use. So if we're gonna pay the $58,000, then that would only require $17,000 from our operating budget this year that we'll put into there. It's not gonna be any less than what it would be right now if we paid for the boiler out of that. If we pay for it out of the TIF fund, it gets reduced accordingly. There's no tax increase, the boiler gets paid for, and we're no further behind in the capital fund than what we're planning on being right now.
okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Can we, I've asked this before, while we're on this, because it does get confusing. Why are we funding building maintenance issues out of the fire equipment reserve? We should have that under the municipal building fund. I mean, unless you're talking just
Either
the
that or
physical
create-
structure of the building.
Either that or
But
create a
to
fire
me,
department.
You gotta have that as
building
part
reserve.
of the operation of the building, so, I'm just saying. And then we're capitalizing for our equipment as we should be, and then if we need to do a project, we can capitalize for that. And I think that's the way, actually, that's the way we should be setting them up, because you put it in fire equipment reserve, and if somebody comes along and you say you got $75,000 in the fire equipment reserve, but it's gonna pay for the furnace, that doesn't necessarily meet the definition of what the law says. It says it should be specifically for the purpose that it's set up for. And we stretch it when we use generalities, and it gets confusing sometimes also. I mean, I'm just saying, does anybody agree, disagree with that? I mean, it's another line of accounting, but.
We've got a building maintenance reserve line under the fire ambulance department as well.
Well, then probably the furnace repair and the door repairs should have been there, not in the equipment reserve, because he got a little bit confused himself when we started talking about that.
And we put $10,000 into that in 15, and it's scheduled for 30,000 in 16, which would be the parking lot, or the tarred area out front.
Right, but if we took the 53 or whatever and put it in there from the TIF, and then we're not. Because fire equipment reserve, if I'm not wrong, when it was set up to replace equipment, fire trucks, ladders, so on and so forth. That's all,
Yep.
okay?
Anyway, is there any more discussion?
Yeah, I got one more thing. I think it's just my opinion here that, you know, the library, it seems like we're kind of halfway doing that. And I think we either need to do it or we need to not do it. I don't think we should be doing it halfway. And that's just my opinion. It's an asset to the community. I don't necessarily use it, but I don't think it's something we should be funding halfway.
Any other comments?
I don't know. I mean, I'm in there often, like, instead of getting movies from Redbox, my kids and I go to the library and get movies from there, and it's always jam-packed with kids and people. And again, doing the passport stuff, I just, like you said, we can't do it halfway. We can't half-staff the city and expect people to come in if our library's shutting down and other services are being shut down. Like, it's just reality. We want people to live here. We need to have services provided for them and not come to a skeleton crew that doesn't have a library and has, you know.
Well, I mean,
Half the
it's not we
officers
don't
on
have a
duty.
library, I mean, we have a library.
Right, but Lisa has come in and done a tremendous job. I
Well,
mean, if you
I
guys
don't
haven't
disagree
been
with that.
in,
I don't think anybody
and
disagrees.
I don't think it's anything we can, oh, let's open 3 days a week. I mean, it's just, that's not, like, let's close the fire department 3 days a week. Just, you know, I mean, it's just not practical to do that. And with any other services in the city, we can't go halfway. Taxes go up 1/3 of a mil, 1/2 a mil. It's not, I mean, how much is that per, like, our $100,000 house? It's like,
Average house, which is about $95,000, 1/3 of a mil would be $31.
here's my point. I mean, no one's gonna
Yeah,
not eat
I understand the
for a
point.
week
$31 is an awful lot of money to people that,
per year.
yeah.
Well, then
An
that's.
awful lot of senior people that live in this town and are on Social Security, and it's too bad, but that's all they've got. And, you know, for them to understand the 1/2 a mil, whether it's for the library or anything else, you know, especially if it's something they don't use, that's a hard thing for them to understand too.
Then you're assuming they're not using it, and then people aren't coming to the city.
I'm
who
not assuming, I'm
contribute to the
saying
tax
if they
base.
happen not to use that service, they just, you know,
I've made that point before too, Tiffany. It's not a lot of money. It isn't.
And if we have the means here to do these things, it will bring people to the community and add to, you know, our income. So, whereas if you don't do it, no one's coming in. So, I mean, looking to the future, those are just things that need to be done. I mean,
do you think that the library has been adequate in the past, or it never
I've
has?
only been here 3 years,
Yeah.
but I have seen a dramatic change in those 3 years since we've been coming.
So,
Services provided, and I mean, I was in there the other day getting
I
movies.
mean, our tax base keeps going down, so, I mean, whether the library has
Well,
been there or
currently,
not. So.
but if we close it down, it's gonna get even less.
But again, no one's talking about closing it down. Sorry? Are we interested in having young people come to the area? Well, if there was jobs available here, I think they might.
There are.
Decent jobs, yeah.
The State Workforce Investment Board has in their minutes online that they need tech training. They need people with technology skills, with STEM skills. That's what we're teaching them.
Yep.
Your driver's license is probably not gonna let you fly on a domestic flight next year because of Maine's non-compliance with Real ID. That would be more passport revenue if we could do that. We've got folks coming in that are already complaining that we're not keeping up with what they're asking us to do already, so we can't continue short-staffed. The public is being pretty ugly about it. We are full of young people constantly. We have brought the connection coming into that building up there the state has up to a gig, and we've got equipment going in for USAC money that's gonna throw that signal quite a ways around. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on, stuff that would attract people to the area. Amazon, for God's sakes, is opening a brick and mortar store because millennials don't read digital as much anymore. They prefer print and they that's not gonna address the problem. The problem isn't the workload that we have when people aren't there. It's as soon as those doors open, you know, I need to go online to file for PD assistance, can somebody help me with that? I am writing a book and I will need to research what it's like to live in New Sweden. Can you give me that stuff? This is the sort of stuff that we have coming in every single day.
I'll ask you a question too, because I know that you've added a lot of services, but are we generating any income from that service, from the services?
Most of our revenue is gonna come from increased passport services. You can't do that with volunteers or auxiliary staff. Grant funding, but you've got to have staff doing that because they want to know who's overseeing this grant.
But what about the people who are coming in and saying, can you help me do this, or can you help me do this, or can you help me do this?
That
That's,
funding ultimately needs to come from the Workforce Investment Act, and that's what the state library is actually working on right now. We tried earlier this year to get a meeting with our local Workforce Investment Board, and it got canceled. Jim McKinney at the state library has been trying to finally did get a meeting with them, and is looking to get with meeting to get caught up on that. There should be funding coming from that, but we've got to go after it, and if the short staff,
yeah, because you've done a fantastic job and the library is great. And I think that you should have your librarian too. The only thing that I have a problem with it is that we're gonna, if we have to raise the taxes, then that person, that $31 or whatever, that some of the people just don't have any more money to put out there. And that's the, you know, a lot of people say, that's not a problem, I want a library and I'm willing to pay for it. But my God, there's so many people that just don't have that money. And that's what I hear. And I hear it from some of the other people in town who can afford to pay their taxes, but they'll say to me, but just because I can afford it doesn't mean that my neighbor can, and that's who I have to think about. And they'll say, so I wouldn't support it. That's the thing. If we could find a way to generate more income or something from the...
Or to get the funding coming from where it should be coming from. You know, that's a discussion that's been happening between the Department of Education and this Museum of Library Services is, hey, you're asking public libraries in town with no career center to pick up all those services, you gotta help us fund it.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna just do that on their own, we've got to go after it. So, yeah, there's funding out there, but we've gotta get it going the right way. It's just like going after any other grant, because that's what that is, that's federal grant money.
I mean, I understand, and we talk about, you know, things that bring more people here, and whether it's a library, or whether it's, you know, a rec center, or whether it's an indoor pool, or you know, whether it's jobs. But, you know, the population here keeps decreasing
And we're older.
year after year, and it's aging. It's, you know, and we're no different than basically anywhere else in Maine. I mean, I guess there's a couple of places that have increased slightly, but regardless of how good their libraries are or their recreation facilities are or whatever, the population is still going down. And, you know, you can't keep putting more money into the facilities we have when the population keeps going down, because the more it goes down, the fewer people are paying taxes and the less revenue there is.
But with that mentality, it's only going to continue going negative. Let's stop putting money in, stop putting money in. Oh, now we're dead.
So, Tiffany, you honestly believe if we put money in the library, people are going to start moving here?
I don't know that everyone's like, oh, Caribou has a great library, let's move there. But when we do
I
that
have never
with
heard anybody
library,
say
we
that,
do it
but
with everywhere else.
A good example of that is the airport.
Right.
We have just sunk a boatload of money into that airport, and 2 months ago, that parking lot was full. There's two classes going on, there's several new planes, I mean,
Are those people that moved here?
it doesn't matter, it's being used.
No, I'm just asking that, I don't know. It's being used, yeah.
Yeah.
So, how much revenue are we getting from that?
It's hard to see that stuff. I mean, people are eating
That's
locally,
so
shopping
short-sighted.
locally. Right.
No, it's not short-sighted, I mean, if we're, you know, we don't get any revenue from it, is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, what do we get from it? What revenue do we get
Got
from
a
it?
question on here.
Mr. Mayor, we moved to Caribou because of the library. We took our daughter, we let her
The high school
The high
library.
school.
High school library, Wanda Brown ran an excellent high school library. People do move to towns because of libraries. We didn't move to Presque Isle because of a library. So people do move to towns. And I've seen this time and time again. I've been in education in 5 states, libraries in 4 states, public libraries, school libraries, corporate libraries, medical libraries, academic libraries. They move to towns, part of which is because of libraries. It is not a generator when it comes to revenue. It is a service.
I understand it's not a generator of revenue. I understand
But if
that.
that service is not there, we lose that chance.
Well, you lose that chance to some people. I mean, like yourself. I mean, most people move because of jobs or whatever.
Yeah, was there a
That's the main reason for
But
people
it's the
moving.
overall face of a city, I feel like, when you have a nice-looking rec center and there's a ton of kids outside all summer playing, the library's up and going, you see the police cars driving around, like, that says, oh, we are investing in our city. When you start doing things
I
at a bare
understand all that,
minimum.
but the
Well-
population of this city has gone down continuously for, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years,
Let
whatever.
it shut down then. It's gonna keep going down.
No,
and
no,
shut
but
down.
I'm just saying that none of those things, we've had those things, and it's not bringing additional people here. That's all. I mean, look, if the population was growing, I'd say, yeah, maybe it's all these things that are helping to do that, but the population isn't growing.
Population's decreased about approximately 50 people in the last 5 years per year. So that's what, 250 people?
Yeah.
So somebody, I'm gonna be a little sarcastic here, but I'm gonna make a point too, okay? Somebody else's library must be better than ours. Okay? I mean, that's it, and, our problems didn't start today, they didn't start yesterday. They started probably about 25 years ago when the base closed, okay? We're in a poor location to draw in economic development. With economic development comes the people to come to the library that we can, promote and stuff like that. And I think we do a good job of promoting the community, but, we're not the only community in the whole country that's fighting for the same damn economic development. And it gets difficult. And I think the point that we're trying to make is that, and I don't disagree with a lot of the things that are being said here, but what I am looking at is that $13 does matter, or $31 does matter to some people. It matters to those people that aren't getting a pay raise this year, all right? I lose $700 or so now out of my retirements because I'm dependent on the federal government for my income, okay? But I chose that way of life. I have to accept it. But there may come a time when that $31, I'm gonna miss it. So it's not the matter of the pennies on the dollar or anything like that. And those of us that are working or have good incomes and can support those things, I'm in total agreement with the let's do it. But we have to realize that unfortunately, our population is not growing. Our economic base is not growing, and we can't continue to fund, and take the money out of somebody's pocket. If the private sector sees a decrease in business, they see a decrease in revenue, they can't go to the city office and say, hey, look, our money's down, raise taxes and give it to us, okay? And that's what's happening here. And it's difficult for us to sit up here and represent just a small group here, but yet we're sitting here representing 7,900 people, all right? And we have to make the right choices.
Can I just, haven't said anything yet, but I'm for the library. I retired 8 years ago, and there were about 8,000 people here 8 years ago, and it hasn't gone down that much. We had 3 full-time people and 5 paid part-time people. We're going backwards. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm from here. This is my hometown. I don't like to see us going backwards. And the library's just one section, the section I'm gonna fight for, because that's my interest in my career. Three and 5, and we're down to 1 full-time, how many part-time now? And volunteer.
And and he's down 3, and he's down 1, and he could be down some, and she could be down some. So it's, I think everybody's got what they got to say valid, you know.
Sign of the times.
Anything else? Any other suggestions? I mean, I don't think we want to get back into all the nitpicking each little item and everything, but
I'll go home and do that if you want me to. Well, I saved $22,000 the last time I did it. I guess I was the only one that was proud of that.
any further discussion for this workshop?
Well, I'll say, I've said this before, but I built my house in 1975, and my taxes were $700, give or take. And in 1981, we had a revalve, and my taxes went over $1,000 for the first time. And in 2004, it went over 1,500 for the first time. And in 2010, it went over 2,000 for the first time. In 2012, it went over 2,500 for the first time. And last year, it went over $3,000 for the first time. So a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, it reaches, there's the tipping point at some point. And
How much did you pay for a loaf of bread in 1978? I mean,
how much what?
did you pay for a loaf of bread then, too?
But I'm just saying,
I know.
my income didn't go up sixfold.
It is. I don't even have an income, so, you know.
Again, I just, you know, as I say, my only, I mean, we're talking here, whether it's a third of the mill or whatever, but as we said, the county is going to be increased. There's going to be an increase from the county. There probably will be an increase from the school board. I don't know that, but there probably will be, just based on past practice. So, you know, we're not talking $31 increase on the taxes. We might be talking $131. You know, or it might be 231, who knows? But, you know, it's not just us, it's the others as well. And as I say, I just find, from our standpoint, I just find it very difficult to have a tax increase when we've just taken in $3.4 million. And it just doesn't add up with me, so.
If I can just toss my 2 cents in, I think Councilor McDougall made a good point about doing things halfway. And maybe at some point we need to decide if we're going to do them at all. And that's a tough thing to say, but we can only do things halfway for so long. And if there's a tough decision that needs to be made, maybe that tough decision needs to be made today. The other thing is, we're already going to be looking at $300,000 to $350,000 down going into the 2017 budget. That's going to be tough to try and come up with next year.
It's tough every year trying to come up with what there is. I mean, that's all part of it. I mean, we've been sitting now for, what, 3 years with close to no increase. Maybe we all get lucky and interest rates will be up 6-8% or something next year.
Well, you better put in a phone call to Janet Yellen then when you go home.
Yeah.
Because she's behind the power curve there. Way behind the power curve.
I don't really agree that we're doing halfway. You're talking about the library, I don't really think that we're doing that halfway. In fact, if you look at what they're offering now compared to what they offered 3 or 4 years ago, there's no halfway. It might have to be on a lesser work week or something like that, but I don't really see that as halfway. Your services will still be there. If you need to close for half a day to apply for your grant money or something like that until hopefully things get better, you know, that would be something that you could do, but I don't see this as, you're offering the services that you can offer and you're doing the best that you can, and people are just gonna have to understand that. That's no different than any other services. You might have a longer wait in line because you've got less staff someplace else or whatever, like the post office. Well, we're down a man, so they have a longer line to wait, but you're still getting that service. Now, I don't really look at the library as being halfway, or the rec department or anything, but there are essential services that we have to fund before, and I'm not saying that non-essential is a bad thing to say, well, you're a non-essential service, but the library, you can get by in the town without a library, but you can't without a police department, the ambulance, and things like that. So you kind of take a back seat to what's left over, which maybe doesn't seem fair, but you still are offering those services, and you're doing a really good job, and I don't see it as halfway.
Lisa? Is it you and Mary and Lisa and Katie only now?
And Aaron.
Jean doesn't work there at all anymore? Okay. You're the
Plus
only,
my son that came in and worked for free with me the other day because I didn't have enough staff. That happens a lot. I haven't had a vacation in over a year. That would be really nice thing to do. Just saying.
guess I'll have to go work the library so she can go on vacation. Donate.
All right, anything else? The workshop over? No one got anything else to add?
Can't get over the puddle, we're not gonna jump anywhere else, so.
Well, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you very much.